So the early frames of this biopic, we see Edith as a small child, initially living with her mother, who's a hopeless drunk, and the father, who's in the army, First World War, I think. And when he comes home on leave, being demobbed, he removes Edith from his mother's care and asks his mother to take care of her. His mother runs a brothel. So we get a picture of early life with a drunk and then living in a brothel. It epitomises, I guess, the notion of the fact that she's a bit of a rags to riches story. The movie opens to the sound of some haunting violins, and we are viewing from across the street Robert and Emma's house, and we witness a confrontation taking place, although we can't hear the details. This follows what appears to have been some sort of dinner party, but anyway, that opens the proceedings here, and then we switch from there to a pub, and Jerry and Emma are meeting after a period where they haven't seen each other, and it appears they're meeting to sort of just tidy up the loose ends on the affair that has ground to a halt. And they, as I say, haven't seen each other for a while, and so the conversation is quite cordial, catching up with each other's families, and it appears quite a normal conversation, other than the fact that they were lovers, and this meeting has appeared a little bit out of the blue. And as a beginning of a movie, you were sort of wondering, well, what the hell's going on here? But I've seen this movie about 4 times, so for me it was interpreted quite accurately. The conversation in the pub is almost a nostalgia trip, as they recall their time when they were meeting, and when the two families met, and at that particular time they were of the view, or certainly Jerry was of the view, that they were keeping their affair a secret, and it's all very, very cordial, and we realised that they'd had an affair for about 7 years, and in that time Jerry had been meeting Robert for weekly sort of lunches, and were regarded really much as friends, and it's all becomes almost a little bit too English style, petite and proper. Then finally Emma tells Jerry that the previous night there was a confrontation with Robert, that we witnessed from across the street, and that he confessed to her, or he told her that he'd had a number of affairs with many women, and it caught her a bit by surprise, as she thought that she was the one who was betraying, but here her husband had been up to it in more ways than one. And so that's why she contacted Jerry to meet. So as you can see, we're laying down the sort of the fact that they're all up to it, but this isn't the message that we heard at the beginning of the affair, and which we're likely to witness as we go backwards in time. Then Robert comes to Jerry's house following a call from Jerry that he wants to see him, and what unfolds are more lies. The conversation that Emma alleged that she had with Robert, which led to her telling him about her affair with Jerry, and he about his affairs with many women. That in fact didn't happen the night before. In fact, it had happened 4 years ago. So Jerry now realises that Emma was lying to him as well, and Jerry, once he is aware of this, he visibly panics. He seems unable to cope with the fact that he didn't know what was going on, even though he was actively involved in an affair, and presuming that his friend didn't know. And he panics about his own marriage, but is reassured by Robert, who appears to be all taking it in his stride, even though the culmination of the night before confrontation has confirmed that he and Emma will be seeking a divorce in the near future. So it's a bit of a web, really, of lies and betrayal. This title sums it up quite clearly. And so that's the first sort of part of this movie. The next phase, which I think is 3 years back, as a cordial sort of trio together, just discussing, well, small talk, friendly stuff, and then the family goes to Venice, and there's the issue comes up when Robert at the post office, inquiring after some mail or something, finds out that a letter has arrived for his wife, and he talks with his wife when he comes back about this in such a way that he revels in her sort of discomfort at being found out with regard to the fact that the letter is written by Jerry, and Robert is aware of this, but he enjoys seeing his wife feeling uncomfortable as she realizes that the secret affair is probably no longer secret, and eventually she confesses. It's all sort of part of knitting story together, but it's whereas one might expect a male to go explosive, Robert appears to be very calm and enjoys reveling in this subtle sort of interrogation. He acknowledges his suspicions. And then the next phase, we see Emma arriving at the flat that she and Jerry are renting, and this is post Venice trip, and she is relieved to see him, and we get a sense that their desire for sex is still quite strong. Following the Venice trip, Robert, now fully conversant to the facts that his wife is having an affair with his friend Jerry, they meet for lunch, and Robert's manner is much more aggressive when he talks about his career in a way previously not heard by Jerry. He's very critical of it, and he's clearly on the verge of wanting to confront Jerry about it, but in attempting to hold that back, his anger is spilling over into other areas. I seem to remember learning this. A racket response, I think it was called, where you actually project your anger onto a different topic from the one that you should be projecting it on, to avoid other issues spilling out, or assume, meaning the end of their friendship. I was intrigued by this scene at the end of another phase where Jerry and Emma are in their flat post Venice. Emma shares with him, there's a discussion about whether they have been unfaithful to each other, which I find quite amusing, given that they are both being unfaithful to their partners. And then Emma shares with Jerry that she's pregnant. She reassures him quickly that the conception took place while he was in New York, which brings around a feeling of relief to him. And then when she shares the fact that it's Robert who's the father, there's a tinge of Jerry that appears rather unhappy, angry, frustrated about that news. possibly wishing that he had been the father. It's just a sense that I got. Anyway, it's worth you viewers waiting for that scene at the end before the music then takes us into a further period back in time. The last two phases of this reversal in time show them renting their love nest, and then we go back to a party at their Robert and Emma's house, where the first flickerings, the first of those sort of feelings start to glow inside. The idea of an extramarital affair, the idea of taking risks with a new relationship because our marriage or relationship is somewhat stale and lacks that sort of vigour and excitement. I'd like to point out though that the way this is constructed is extremely good, and even though I've watched this movie now probably 6 times, I'm still intrigued about some of the issues that crop up between the three. So in summary, I think 2 scenes I'd like to point out to you that were worth watching. The one I mentioned earlier involving Kingsley, Robert, putting pressure on Jerry with regard to the affair and when it began, and also much the same, the pressure Robert puts on Emma in Venice regarding the mail that he collected for her, which he recognised as Jerry's handwriting, and she was visibly quavering and had to come forth with the fact that they were having an affair, that the secret was out. I think those particular scenes hallmark the extraordinary ability of Ben Kingsley as an actor, and the vulnerability of the two who were indulging in this extramarital affair in secret and couldn't really handle when it became public to the aggrieved partner. And this very much acts as a middle mirror image, really, to what would happen in reality. And of course, the magical words of Harold Pinter, it could not really be laid with more praise. A tremendous writer.